Sergeant Victor Henry Fast, United States Army, World War II. Vic was one of the first Omaha Beach D-Day veterans that I interviewed. I interviewed him almost 20 years ago. He's 81 years of age at that time. It was 2004, March 21st, 2004 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Vic passed away 4 years later, 2008, at the age of 85. And just one of those, you know, the World War II veterans are my first love of my work. That's where I started my work 20 years ago now. I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary of the work that I started in 2003. At that time, 1,500 World War II veterans were dying every day in our country. 1,500 World War II veterans were dying every day when I started my work. There were about 4.5 million of them at that time, 20 years ago. Now there's probably less than maybe 100 or 200,000. My ranks have grown thin, folks. I've lost most of my World War II veterans. It's like losing a member of my family. So that's kind of the personal side of my work. But Vic is one of the first Omaha Beach veterans I interviewed. He served with the 5th Ranger Battalion. If you know your history, they were famous. The Rangers lead the way, the famous saying, and they worked with the 2nd Ranger Battalion. They scaled Point to Hawk, the cliffs on Omaha Beach. But I've been to Omaha Beach 3 times with my work, and just holy ground there, folks. But Vic landed on Omaha Beach with the 5th Ranger Battalion, a platoon sergeant. Saw a lot of action, received a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, a Good Conduct Medal, and other awards for his bravery and his gallantry in action. And just, I miss Vic and all my World War II veterans. And I want to thank William Barber. William, thank you for going into my archives and picking out Vic's story and making it possible now for many to learn more about World War II, Omaha Beach, D-Day, the ending of the Hitler regime in Europe, and just a tremendous story. So William, I want to thank you. God bless you. Thank you for your patriotism and your commitment to our veterans and making this story possible. I salute you. Okay, folks, Victor Fast. If you'd like to sponsor a story, I'd encourage you to do so. Take ownership in what I'm doing. Connect with what I'm doing. A lot of you are really getting excited about this, and I'm happy to feature the stories that you sponsor on my channel. And you're making it possible for many people to listen to history. History is best learned from those who are there. There's information in the video description of this video, below the video. If you want to donate to my work, there's a link in the comment section, or you can go to my website, larrycappetto.com, and click on the sponsor event link. And I also want to let our Canadian viewers know, I have a lot of stories from Canadian World War II veterans. I premiered a film in Toronto in 2007 called Lest They Be Forgotten Canada, featuring World War II veterans. I've interviewed Korean veterans, even a veteran that served with the Americans in Vietnam from Canada, and the Gulf War, Afghanistan. And so if you'd like to sponsor one of those stories, let me know. I have a page for the Canadian stories. Just contact me and I'll share that with you. I really would like to share some of the Canadian stories. They're just as amazing. They feel overshadowed a lot of times because of the American victories, but our Canadians served right alongside of us in all these wars. So God bless the Canadians. Okay. All right, folks, that's about it for now. Sit back, relax, and let's share this channel. Subscribe to this channel. Let's keep this thing going, folks. And it sounds like a cliche, but freedom is not free. Freedom is earned, and we're fighting for the same freedoms today in our own country that our veterans fought for. So I'm proud to share with you Vic Fast, one of my beloved World War II veterans, on the Voices of History channel. God bless you. We're going to focus on D-Day, okay?
Okay.
And the first thing I want to ask you is just, when I do these interviews, Vic, it's kind of like going back in time for a little bit here. And what I want you to tell me is what you remember the night before you landed. Just kind of tell me where you were,
how you're feeling, what you're anticipating the next day, and maybe just the decision to go. So just tell me that story the night before, what you remember.
The night before, we were on two ships in the Channel, the English Channel. It was the 4th and 5th of June, 1944. The 4th of June is my birthday, and we were going to land the 5th of June, but Eisenhower decided the water was too rough, so we couldn't land. I happened to be on a ship called the Prince Baudouin, a captured ship, Belgian ship captured by the British, and the rest of the company, the rest of the battalion, was on another ship called a Belgian ship called the Prince Leopold. We were sitting on the ship. We'd seen no combat, so we were not afraid or anything. We had the only gentleman in our 5th Ranger Battalion that had seen combat was our colonel, Colonel Max Schneider. He'd been in Africa, Sicily, Italy, and Eisenhower asked him if he wouldn't lead us D-Day, and he did. Great guy. By the way, I just got an email from his grandson, and he wanted to know about him, so I emailed him. But we were sitting on the Prince Baudouin playing pinochle and cleaning our weapons, and we were told we were going to land, when we got on the ship on the 4th, as I recall, in Weymouth, England. We were going to land the next day, but we didn't, and then they came over the box, the loudspeaker on the ship, telling us that we were going to delay it a day. And then Eisenhower said, come whatever, hell or high water, we're going to land on the 6th of June, 1944. It was a blustery day, and that was my day before the landing.
Well, now you did land on Omaha, right?
We landed on Omaha.
Now, just take it slow, but give me, what you remember about that. Again, some of the guys remember eating the last meal, woke up at midnight, 2 in the morning, then they got onto the LCVPs and they started ashore in the flotilla. And just tell me what you remember. Again, you said you weren't in combat. I mean, what's going through your head as a young man and anticipating what might happen?
You really didn't know what would happen. You were not afraid, just like the guys in Iraq today. They have no fear. They're 18, 19, 21 years. I was 19 years old. And I don't remember anything about the meals on the ship. I remember crawling over the side of the ship and going down the net. Most dangerous thing in the world. The little LCAs, landing craft assaults, were going like this, and the big boat was maybe going like this, but the little boat was going like this. And you better hit it right, because if you go down and drop when it's like that, you'd break your back. So we watched it, and when the thing started letting down, you'd drop, and you'd drop right with it, see? Well, we got into the landing craft assault, and then rendezvoused. Did anyone ever tell you about the strategy that Omar Bradley had figured out for D-Day for the Rangers, the 2nd and the 5th Rangers?
Tell me.
We trained in Scotland. We climbed cliffs and whatnot. There was a cliff called Point de Hoc.
I've been there.
Me too. The 3 companies of the 2nd Rangers and their headquarters landed on Point de Hoc. The strategy was early in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. 3 companies and the other 3 landed with us. The other 3 companies of 2nd Rangers and all of the 5th were with us. 3 of the companies were going to go up the cliff. And we were going to rendezvous below the cliff in the channel. And if 2nd Ranger Battalion did not scale the cliff, was not successful, they were to shoot up a red flare. We never saw a red flare. They were successful. And then we were supposed to land in Omaha, as I recall, Dog Green Beach, I think. And our colonel, being the very astute and knowledgeable combat experienced colonel, I was standing right behind him because I was his interpreter. He wanted to see 3 guys behind him D-Day. He says, when I turn around, I want to always see 3 guys behind me. Vic Fast, my interpreter, I want to talk to Germans if we catch them. My radio man, if I want to talk to my field commanders, and my intelligence sergeant, Sergeant Epstein, who had a photographic memory. He could tell you everything he ever read. Schneider was looking over the LCA, and he said, my God, we're not going to land there. Omaha Dog Green. So he turned and we landed about 15 degrees to the left. The British Navy landed us. Did you know that? The British Navy landed the American Rangers. He was whatever you call him, the coxswain. And we had orders. He had orders, and the colonel had orders to land at Omaha Dog Green. Snyder saw that. He saw the tremendous artillery firing, the 88s and machine guns looking right down it. So he ordered the commander, coxswain, whatever you call him, to go to the left so far. He didn't want to do it. And I recall very distinctly, Colonel Snyder just reached back and he started pulling out his .45, and he turned us real quick. And we landed Omaha Dog White. Probably saved hundreds of lives.
Tell me now, you're going in, you've gone over the nets, you're in the landing crafts, you're coming to shore. At what point did you realize maybe this isn't going to be, some of the guys thought it was going to be because the Navy and the Air Force were doing all their bombarding, but at what point did you realize that you guys were in for something here? Or was there a point that happened?
Well, we would have followed Colonel Snyder anywhere. We were crawling up the beach, and then the bullets started flying. A lot of guys got hit. We had a Catholic priest who told us before we landed, he said, "Men," he said, "you do the fighting D-Day, I'm going to do the praying." I'm Protestant, so he had me, whenever he led in the Protestant service, he'd have me lead the singing, whatnot. A great Catholic priest. Could have been a Methodist preacher.
You do the fighting and let him do the praying.
That's what he told us, in England, in Weymouth. We crawled up on the beach, and as I recall, I saw Father Lacy dragging guys from the upper end of the beach to the end of the water where they were taking them back to the landing craft, the LCAs that were not sunk, and then they take them back to the big ship, the Texas, and the other ships, and then take them back to England. The guys are wounded. We captured a number of Germans, 15 or so, pretty early in the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was the German interpreter. So Colonel Max Snyder comes to me and he says, "Find out if there's a minefield ahead of us. I got a funny feeling there's a minefield ahead of us. We're inland now, maybe there's sand on the beach, and then there's a rock area, or kind of a rock wall they called it, and then you had bluffs, grass. We were now in the grass, almost in the grass. And for some reason or another, the colonel decided there was a minefield ahead of us. So he told me to find out if there was. That's all he said. I saluted him and he took off. I looked over these prisoners and I picked the youngest prisoner I could find. Took him aside and I told him, of course in German.
Say it in German. What did you say?
Sie sagen mir, was ich will knowing. You will tell me what I want to know. My German's getting pretty bad. Jawohl, he says. Yes, he says. I said to him, and you're going to tell me what I want to know. You don't know it, but you aren't. First thing I said, you see all those aircraft overhead? Thousands of American aircraft overhead, not a German plane overhead. And I had him away from all the other. I checked him out. He was an engineer, young engineer. And I said, I'm going to give you three choices. Three choices. Number one, if you tell me nothing, tell me absolutely nothing, I'm going to send you over to the Russian front. I'll let him think about that a minute. Of course, you know, all you could do to any prisoners was a Geneva Convention. Name, rank, and serial number, period. You were not supposed to torture them or anything. If that's all they told you, you were supposed to take them back and leave them alone. He thought about that a minute. I said, your second choice. I said, if you tell me there is a minefield in front of us, that's what I want to know, if there is one, and you leave any doubt in my mind that you're telling me the truth, I'm going to turn you over to my Jewish buddy over here, Herbert Epstein, and he'll take you over there behind that big rock. So I let him think about that a minute. Third choice. You tell me that there is a minefield, if there is one ahead of us, and convince me you're telling me the truth. I'll send you to the United States. Of course, I couldn't do anything of the sort. However, there were a lot of World War II German prisoners right here at Fort Carson and in Kansas, a lot of them, farm workers. The young man got down in the sand and he drew me a little pattern. He says, yes, jawohl, da sind Minen. There are mines in front. Bouncing Betsy's, 3 prongs. You step on a bouncing Betsy and all they do is blow your boot off. Well, that's worse really for the company than if you get killed, because now we're taking care of a guy. So, and a lot of guys some guys still stepped on bouncing Betsy's. So I thanked him, and I think I asked him, what would you do? He said, go around. So we went around, went up the Vierville Draw. And here is where Ed Dickman says he rode a horse through the minefield. And I can't imagine, of course, I don't know where I was. I hardly knew him. He was in B Company.
Now, you came in on an LCA, not an LCVP?
LCA, Landing Craft Assault.
Describe the landing again. Are you being shot at? Was it like the movie Saving Private Ryan? I mean, what's going on?
Very much like Saving Private Ryan, the first half. The British did not get us up on shore or ankle-deep water, knee-deep water. We jumped in the water, jumped off the LCA and went underwater, just like a landing, Saving Private Ryan. Crawled up on the beach. Of course, when I crawled up on the beach, I had nothing. You couldn't swim with 80-pound pack on your back, a rifle, helmet, extra pair of, you had a blanket, food, grenades, ammunition. When I crawled up on the beach, all I had was 2 bandoliers of ammunition around my neck and my rifle. Within 10 minutes, I rearmed myself, and I have a picture of myself with a Thompson submachine gun and a .45, which I carried all through. I got a new helmet, picked them up from dead Rangers. And
well, tell me about it, Vic. I mean, you guys landed on the beach. Was it like in that movie when the ramp went down, they were shooting at you, or were there just some artillery rounds coming in? I mean,
yeah, a lot of 88s, a lot of bullets flying. You know, you're underwater. But immediately your weight you'd hit as I remember, you hit the bottom immediately and you start peeling off everything. And then you just start crawling or walking. The next thing you know, you're above water. And next thing you're up on the beach, soaking wet. And bullets flying around, but you know, there's so much confusion. And it's just like the 82nd Airborne, they landed and there's confusion all over the place. And that's where Brigadier General Coda came up to our Colonel Schneider, Max Schneider, and he said to him, Herb Epstein and I remember this. A lot of guys saw this. They think they saw this, but they couldn't have. The field fellas could not have heard this. But Herb Epstein and I saw this, heard this. We were on the beach, and we were flat on our face, bullets flying around. And here comes Brigadier General Coda. And Colonel Schneider jumps up, and he says, who are you? And he says, I'm Colonel Schneider from the 5th Ranger Battalion. He says, I'm expecting the Rangers to lead the way. That's where the Ranger motto, or whatever you want to call it, came from. Rangers lead the way, right there with us. I really think the Rangers had a rendezvous with history on D-Day, because I read this in a book similar to this. Because at the right time, at exactly the right moment in time, I think the Rangers were in the position and had the courage to really lift the invasion beyond the beaches. We then dashed inland around the minefield and then started Vierville-sur-Mer. There were no Germans in Vierville-sur-Mer, and started cleaning out the hedgerows. And D-Day night, I had a good experience. If you want to know about it.
Sure.
This is D-Day night now.
Okay.
I had no squad. I was a lone corporal. And Colonel Schneider came to me and he said, we're in a chateau We're in the French chateau in Vierville-sur-Mer, Vierville by the sea. And we had dug foxholes around the chateau in front. And by the way, Bruce, I took Bryce and Vicky and Mom right in front of this chateau when we were there, and I showed them where we dug our foxholes. He came to me and he said, go down to the beach and get all the ammunition you can get, 60 millimeter mortar ammunition. And I didn't know what to do. I saluted him. I had no squad. I had nobody. So what am I going to do? So I could speak German. I could speak enough French to get by. And this is rural country. So I found a Frenchman. This was after dark.
Yeah.
Found a Frenchman. Harnessed up a horse, two-wheel cart, and I went clanking down the Vierville draw to the beach, and I loaded this cart completely full of 60 millimeter mortar ammunition. I took it off of dead Rangers and dead 116th Regimental Combat Team guys from Virginia, and went clanking back up the cobblestone, parked the wagon behind the chateau, went in the front door, and of course he had blankets all over the windows, and the first sergeant was sitting near the front door, and he had a little candle going. And the old man, Colonel Snyder, was in the next room on the floor sleeping. So Sergeant was sitting there, and I said to him, I want to report to the colonel. He said, no, he's sleeping. I was honest to goodness citizen soldier. I shoved the first sergeant aside and walked right by and woke up the colonel, told him, your ammunition's out back, Colonel. He said, good job. Went out front and crawled in my foxhole. That's my night experience of D-Day night. I was in my foxhole a couple of minutes, and German bombers went overhead, started bombing us. They knew we were there, of course. No bombers came overhead during the day, but that night they bombed us. And Father Lacy was sleeping in the chateau. He come bounding out of the chateau and landed right on top of me in my foxhole. He was a little short guy. We called him Little Short Padre. I got a picture of him.
Okay.
Father Lacy, great guy.
Tell me more about Father Lacy, because I want to know about, you were describing his...
Did you know he got the DSC for that
No.
heroism? Yes.
Did he really?
D-Day, and three of us really got the DSC for him. Herb Epstein, Jewish guy, Vic Fast, a Protestant guy, and Fitzy Fitzgerald, a Roman Catholic from Brockton, Massachusetts. We decided that that Father Lacy should have something. We just told Snyder we think he ought to get this. So he wrote him up and he got a Distinguished Service Cross next to the Medal of Honor, I think.
Did you ever see him giving last rites or praying with any of the men before they went, or on the beach? I mean, anything
No.
on the beach or anything like that? You
No.
saw him pulling
No.
wounded aside, though.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
But you
How
see,
about before? Did he do a prayer service? Do you know?
oh yeah, Catholic. I'm not Catholic.
Okay, so you
So
didn't go.
I'd never go to his, but he'd always have a Protestant service too. And there were Protestants in our group, quite a few. So he'd come to me and he'd say, could you lead the singing? Because I used to sing in college quartet. I said, sure. So he'd give a little sermon, and I'd lead the singing, and he'd let me recite the Lord's Prayer with him, because the Catholic prayer is somewhat, the ending is a little different. He would never finish. I don't know why it's different, but it is. Great guy. We had a reunion in San Diego about 10 years ago. Herb Epstein was there. Father Lacy was still living. By the way, he's dead. And Father Lacy came over to Herb and me. He said, come on, I'll buy you breakfast. Herb says, okay. Oh, Father Lacy says, I'm not going to convert you guys. I just want to have breakfast with you. And he was a great guy.
But it's an interesting story. That man is an interesting...
He became a Monsignor, whatever that is.
When we're done with the interview, I want to ask you some follow-up stuff about him. But, okay, on D-Day, so now, what time do you think you came in on D-Day, approximately? What time did you land?
Real early morning,
Yeah.
6:30.
So you were right there with all the first waves going in that day, and can you, I mean, again, Vic, in your mind, I mean, I wasn't there. I mean, as a young man, when you see death and destruction around you, are you just so focused on your work, or does that bother you at that time, or is it later that really hit you that you've gone through this, or was it hard for you at that, or were you just so focused on your work?
It wasn't hard then. It hit you later. I lost one of my best friends, D-Day, Walter Zack, Z-A-C-K, first guy killed. I think D.C. Anderson, lieutenant, was second guy killed. But I have some morning reports that show Zack and KIA people, D-Day. But I wasn't really afraid, there was too much going on, and the colonel would maybe, the sniper would be shooting from over here, and I'd follow the colonel around. And he'd say, go up that hedgerow and try to get that sniper if you can. So now I'm on a separate mission, so I'd go up the hedgerow and never did see the sniper. Yeah. I mean, he'd shoot a few times, then I think he'd take off from a church steeple or somewhere.
What was your official title on D-Day?
Interpreter.
Okay.
German interpreter.
Ranger Battalion. Okay.
5th Ranger Battalion.
Okay. You mentioned your friend was killed. Did you see that happen? Was it during D-Day at the inland? Or
no, he was our motor pool sergeant, and we didn't have any jeeps in the Rangers. We were afoot. But he had several jeeps, and he landed. They tell me that he was driving a jeep from probably a landing craft, whatever, LCL, and driving it off, and they say a 88 hit him right in the middle, hit the jeep right while he was driving.
Do you remember going into shore though? Again, the only thing I can focus, the only thing I can even think of is that movie, the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, where they're going in, they're doing the sign of the cross, they're throwing up because they're seasick. I mean, was any of that going on, or was there any humor? Was it all serious? I mean, what were the guys doing next to you? I mean, were they scared? Were they shaking?
Yeah, pretty serious. There was a lot of vomiting going on. Sure, they all gave us a paper sack to vomit in. I never got sick. Ship was going like this. I got sick going over on the Mauritania because they fed you beans every morning and grease, and get so sick you could die. But after I got on the Prince Baudouin, and this never bothered me, I threw my paper bag over the side. I didn't need it. A lot of guys got sick. But the minute you hit land, you're okay.
Was there an order given to lower the ramp? I mean, you got close to shore. You guys jumped over the side, you said?
I don't think Snyder gave the order to lower the ramp. I think the British guy just flat lowered it, and he was not supposed to lower it where you jumped in the water and went underwater. He's supposed to get up there waist deep or ankle deep, get us up shore. But when he wants to drop the ramp, you had to get off of it. There's a picture that a friend of mine, a Marine friend of mine, drew for me, and he superimposed me into that landing, that LCA.
That's a great picture. That is a great picture. Well, we're going to look at a lot of that in a little bit, but okay. You were how old? Did you say you were 19?
19. I turned 19 on the 4th of June, 1944.
I mean, to me, that's just incredible. When I look back and I talk to you guys now, you're 80 years old or older, and to have gone through something like that, it's just, I guess at the time, did you realize the significance of D-Day, or did it just happen? You knew you were going to invade France, but you didn't know any of the specifics, or did you know how enormous this thing was?
Not really. I think just the officers did. However, I had a better idea or a conception of what was going on, because whenever Colonel Snyder would go back, after D-Day even, would go back to Bradley's tent headquarters and get orders, he'd take Herb Epstein and me with him. And we'd go and look at the maps, and I'd pick up a little map and stick it in my pocket, and Herb Epstein would memorize everything. And we had no idea how tremendous, biggest landing in the world. People have a complete misconception of D-Day. I go to schools and talk to high schools and colleges, cadets. They think, I talk about the Rangers landing. Oh boy, the Rangers did everything, Now, there were thousands of people that landed D-Day. There were British and Canadians and Australians, and we lost 40%, as I remember guys telling me, 40% killed and wounded. And there was an outfit from Virginia, Bedford, Virginia, that landed right with us, whole division, or 116th Regimental Combat Team, 116th Regiment of the 29th Division of Virginia. they killed 70%. And they tell me there's not a family in Bedford, Virginia, where there is a D-Day memorial in Bedford, that there's not a family in that town that didn't lose someone, a relative, a father, a son, a sweetheart, cousin, uncle, someone. Every family lost someone. 70% killed. Why would that be? And I've been thinking about that. And you know what I have figured out? They lost 70% killed. We lost about 40% killed and wounded. I've decided that no matter what your occupation in life is, if you're a photographer or a cameraman or a photojournalist or a chemist, or farmer, lawyer, dentist, preacher, teacher, whatever you are, the man or woman that does the best job has had the severest training. The British commandos trained us up in Scotland, and severe training. I called exhaustion beyond exhaustion. They would, of course, we knew how to fire weapons and everything, but they would train us. We'd walk 15 miles, full field pack, up and down the hills in Scotland, and the British guys would say, "Okay, drop off, everybody drop off." The guys would drop off, everybody light up a cigarette. I'd lay back and change socks. A minute later, they'd say, "Everybody up, we got to go 3 more miles." We'd go 3 more miles, and guys would fall out. And then we'd drop down. 1 minute later, 1 more mile, and we'd go 1 more mile. More guys would drop out. Next day, they're transferred out. Did Vic Miller tell you about this?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
We lived with the Scottish people, wonderful people.
Yeah, he said the training was very intense.
Yep.
You were very highly trained and amazing. Now, did you have to? You didn't have to scale the cliffs because the 2nd Ranger Battalion. Was
They were successful.
Now, do you know anything about the gun emplacements up there or anything like that?
Of course, if you were there, you saw them
Yeah,
too.
I saw 'em.
They were not there. They were out being repaired. But that's beside the point.
Wasn't there anything up there shooting down on Omaha Beach?
Oh, yeah. They had, that big circular
I know what you're talking about.
pillbox? Man, they had couple 88s in them. They were shooting right down on Omaha Beach. And we had a lot of cliff scaling training, because if they hadn't made it, we'd had to go there. But Omaha Beach was covered pretty heavy too. You went into Omaha Beach, if you've been there, you saw some of these gun emplacements. 88's still there. And here you're coming at them and they're looking right at you. I never got a scratch. I got wounded later, but never got a scratch.
Why do you think Omaha Beach was so brutal? I mean, Utah Beach was bad, but Omaha Beach was worse.
Worse.
Why do you think, what attributed to that?
I think it was just more heavily defended. And it was nice sand. Well, maybe Utah was nice sand too. But it was nice sand. But they never decided, they never figured out. Rommel never figured anybody'd come up that cliff. And of course the guys had nets and rope ladders and grappling hooks that we trained in Scotland. 3-pronged, great big hook. You'd fire it up from a little rocket and then go up, and hook onto some rocks or some weeds or something, and the guys would start climbing.
I may jump back to Omaha Beach, but I know you've talked to kids at schools and things like that. But this question I asked all the veterans. So I'll ask you a couple. But the first one is, what does freedom mean to you in light of what you've gone through and today and everything? As you look back 60 years ago and the sacrifices that were made, what does freedom mean to Vic Fast?
Means quite a bit. I've thought about this quite a bit. If you don't have freedom, you don't have anything. I'll quote a guy, the best way to put it. Edwin Meese, what was he? General Eisenhower, not. Yes, he was President Reagan's Attorney General, said this about freedom. I can't put it any better. To attain freedom is mankind's highest aspiration. To use freedom wisely is mankind's urgent responsibility. To preserve freedom is mankind's continuing challenge. When I talk to people, I say, please, let's be up to that task. Let's be able to do that. Because freedom isn't free. It's maybe a cliche, I don't know, but oh so true. Freedom isn't free. People in Iraq are hurting. Sure, we lost, what, 500 guys? You hate to lose anybody, but freedom isn't free.
In the same sense, what does the flag mean to you? And during World War II, were you fighting for your country? I mean, were you very conscious of that?
I guess I was, because I had a strange background for being a ranger. I came from a Mennonite community, which was pacifistic. My buddies all went to the CC camp, most of them. It's different today, but I was in college where I met my wife, and when in 1943, I'd had a year of college, Tabor College, Hillsborough, Kansas, and I let them know that I'm going to enlist in the Army or Air Force or whatever. And the dean of men and the president of the college, Schellenberg, Unruh, a couple others called me in front of them, and here I'm a 18-year-old kid sitting in front of these college professors trying to defend myself that I'm going to war. And they said, you can't go to war. You're a conscious objector. They said, we don't believe in killing. I said, I don't believe in killing either. But I said, my God, they attacked Pearl Harbor and killed a bunch of our guys. We didn't ask for that. I said, I'm sure going to war. He said, well, you can't. You know what I did? I got up and walked out. Went out and caught a bus and went home. Never went back. And when I got back after the war, I have to relate this to you. Yeah. Our colonel, we came to Miles Standish, Massachusetts, and they sent us to the nearest post where you wanted your home. So they sent me to Leavenworth, Kansas, which was near my home in Oklahoma. So I went home, and the chaplain, before we left, the last day that we were still in the Army, the chaplain said to us, would you please, when you get home, put on your uniform and go to church in uniform, so the people, the congregations would see that you're home and you won the war. I did. I put on my uniform, had my ruptured duck, walked in. Deacon Schmidt, usher right at the front door. I knew him. He looked at me and he said, it's a Mennonite church. He looked at me and he said, do you think you're welcome here? I said, my mother was awful glad to see me. I turned around and walked out. And I've been back, but it's different now. There is an American Legion post in my little town in Oklahoma, so it's somewhat different, but I couldn't be a conscientious objector. My two best buddies in high school were conscientious objectors. Bless their heart, they're both dead.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I knew I'd be drafted, so I enlisted.
What was it like at that point? I mean, were you afraid to go in? I mean, what were your thoughts about? I mean, you just rallied together as young men and said, this is something we have to do? I
wasn't afraid at all. I went in with Dale Anderson. He was an English, came from a German community, German Mennonite community. Dale Anderson was an English, couldn't speak any German, so he and I joined, and he went to the Navy and I went to the Army. And we just went in. Didn't give it much thought. Got to Fort Riley, Kansas. First thing I saw, I walked in this first mess hall. Great big band-sized picture of Tojo. And right next to the door was a basket full of darts. And the idea was to pick up a dart and throw it at Tojo. So I picked up a dart, threw it at Tojo. He hit him in the groin or hit him in the head or holes all over him,
Just tell me, this kind of sum this up as far as D-Day. Why D-Day? And just tell me your thoughts about the importance of D-Day today, 60 years later. But for somebody who doesn't know, why D-Day? What was D-Day all about?
Well, they say it was the greatest invasion that the world has ever witnessed. And amazing how secretive it was kept. I don't know, being a young kid, it didn't register then what a huge undertaking it was. But today, I guess I can just say I had a little part in it, and it was successful. The good Lord, I think, had a lot more to do with it than we did, because the American Ranger was allowed to use his head. If Colonel Snyder, I probably wouldn't be here today if Colonel Snyder had been a German officer, because when the German officer was given command, you land at Omaha, Dog Green Beach, that's where he's going to land. But when Colonel Snyder saw that, and he says, we're not going to land there, we're going to land over here. His own Ranger mind thinking and giving him that intelligence and not afraid to make a decision. Just like when he told me he found out there's a minefield and he took off. He didn't stand there and say, well, ask him this, ask him these questions. So the American citizen soldier can think for himself. Sure, you follow orders and whatnot, but you also use your head. But thinking back on D-Day, it was a good experience for us, for me. And
do you think it's important that we as a country remember what happened back there 60 years ago?
I think the country and the government is really remembering, because they have this Veterans History Project going on where they interview guys like me and all guys, any veteran, and a copy goes to the Library of Congress. This video I have here goes to the Library of Congress, and it's just kept there for posterity. So they're trying to keep it alive and keep it going, you know.
World War II Memorial Dedication, May 29th.
May 29th.
Are you gonna go to that?
I would love to go, but we decided not to go. My wife's not a good traveler. I tried to get the VFW or the Purple Heart people to get a bus and get 30 guys that would share expenses. Couldn't get it going. And I'm not going to go to that. I'm not going to go to Omaha Beach come 6th of June. It's the 60th, you know. 80. No, I'm 81 in June.
Well, one question, this sounds kind of silly. Did you ever think you'd be 80 years old?
Not really. Now they say we have a chance of being, you know, if you lived through all that, through the Depression and all this, they say now you're going to live. I think a guy told me the other day that I might live to about 92 is my life expectancy. I'm over the life expectancy already. It's 76 for men, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think it is.
Right,
Yeah. My dad lived to be 79, his grandpa. I'm 80.
You know, being 80 years old, I mean, looking back, I mean, is it like another world 60 years ago? Is it like a dream, or is it still sometimes as real as it was yesterday? I mean, is it a fading thing, or is it very real in your life? It seems like it's pretty alive.
It's pretty alive. A lot of Rangers and a lot of commandos and a lot of soldiers, 82nd Airborne, Air Force guys, whatever, they can't talk about it. They'll talk about, another Ranger will talk to me because I can talk about it, because I never got hurt. I helped our Doc Petrick D-Day night cut off a guy's leg. He had a little hacksaw in his kit. Doc Petrick, he was in my house 10 years ago. He's dead now, but he was, you know, he was our surgeon, battalion surgeon, and the guy got stepped on bouncing Betsy and blew half his boot off, and we shot him full of morphine. And two of the guys sat on his shoulders. I sat on his good leg, and we held him out down there, and the doc just sawed his leg off. He was just hanging by the skin. What an experience. Shot him full of morphine, and of course, that was in the chateau.